2015, Alabama went on a pretty incredible run. I've been around Alabama a lot. They played in a lot of big games. They've been the most important program in America for the past 15 years now. So in my role, when you're going to the biggest game in the SEC every week, you tend to see a lot of Alabama. Remember 2015, brief lead up, in case you've forgotten. September 19th, 2015, Ole Miss comes into Tuscaloosa. We were at that game too. They beat Alabama 43-37. That's the year following Bama being upset in Oxford. This was a game where Cooper Bateman was announced as the starter. Jacob Coker came back in afterwards. Bama is -5 turnovers. They lose the game. And that leads me to the game that I'm actually going to talk about. It's a good picture there, Colin. That leads me to the game that I'm going to talk about. And that was 2 weeks later. So there we are. It's October 1st and October 2nd, and there is a big game in Athens. Alabama at Georgia, October 3rd, and the forecast looks miserable. And I don't know about you. I used to love playing sports in the rain. I don't like watching sports in the rain, but it became pretty obvious. There was a tropical system off the Atlantic coast, and we were going to be in a situation where 2 to 4 inches of rain were falling over the span of an afternoon. And that forecast verified, as they like to say in the meteorological industry. So here's what happens. Alabama is a point spread underdog for the first time in 72 games that afternoon. They are a 2-point dog, I think, at Georgia. Irony not lost on me there. It's the first time they've been an underdog, by the way, since the 2009 SEC championship game. They won that one pretty convincingly. So they end up blowing Georgia out 38-3. That's not what I remember. What I remember is it was 38-3 like early to midway through the third quarter. So you would call that garbage time. I mean, you as a fan are probably watching saying, let's just get out of this thing healthy, really both ways, because Georgia had to go to Tennessee the next week. I mean, Alabama still got a season left to play, so let's just get out of this healthy. Well, the Alabama sideline was not of that mentality, obviously. I mean, they're the actual football team. So what happens is Nick Chubb had a consecutive games streak where he had rushed for 100 or more yards, and he was well below 100, and then all of a sudden he breaks one, 83 yards to the house, touchdown. I was in the end zone that he was headed towards, and so I'm filming with a garbage bag around my camera, mind you. I'm filming him. Boom. Nick Chubb runs right into my living room, footage that we don't have tonight, unfortunately. And all right, all's well and good. Extra point, up and good. Commercial break. During the commercial break, that's when media on the sideline use the opportunity to walk behind the bench, and then you go down to the other end zone because you want to be in the end zone the offense is working towards, obviously. I'm walking behind the Alabama bench. There's a big commotion there. At first, I think it's just a position group meeting. But then I look up, and Jarran Reed has his hands, Jarran Reed was a defensive lineman for Alabama at the time, has his hands around the throat of an Alabama linebacker who shan't be named here tonight. And there are about 10 support staffers and half of the starting defense that are having to pull Jarran Reed off of aforementioned Alabama linebacker. And so there's a big fight during the commercial break on the Alabama sideline. I figure, because it's such a big commotion in front of me, that the CBS cameras must be capturing this. And certainly they're going to show this on air. So I didn't think anything else of it. I just assumed everyone had seen it. When I got home that night and then kind of wrung out all my clothes and I watched the replay, the only thing they wanted to talk about was this pregame nonsense where Alabama's coming out of the tunnel and Georgia's jumping up and down. That's not a fight. People who have never been in a fight love to call that a fight. That's not a fight. There actually was a fight during the game, and it was friendly fire, and yet no one ever saw it. So that was part one. Part two, a few months down the road, we're in Glendale, Arizona. National championship game. Alabama versus Clemson. Alabama's up like 45-30. It's fourth quarter, and it's under a minute to go. So Deshaun Watson was playing out of his mind for Clemson. This was the year before they beat Bama with 1 second to go. So Watson hits Jordan Leggett with like 10 seconds left on the clock. He hits him a perfect pass into double coverage across the middle, and Clemson scores what is a garbage time touchdown. I think it helped him cover the spread, so it wasn't an irrelevant touchdown. But there were 5 seconds to go on the clock, so Alabama, I think, recovered an onside kick. They let the clock run out. Ball game. Alabama wins the national championship. Sure enough, there I look on their sideline. This time the game's over, and there's confetti raining down. And there are Alabama defensive players, I kid you not, as confetti is raining. White and crimson confetti is raining down on a team that just won the national championship, and they've got defensive players who are having to be separated. I want to say Jonathan Allen was one of them. And Jonathan Allen at that time was about to come back for his senior year, but they had guys being separated as the confetti fell. And I had someone with Alabama tell me afterwards, after the Ole Miss loss, this was the easiest coaching job, relatively speaking, that Saban had ever had. Because what happened is you had what every coach hopes to happen, and that is a critical mass of your upperclassmen, your leaders, the glue of your team. They buy in and they take control of the wheel and they drive the ship. And you're there to sort of guide it, but the guys in the locker room, the guys on the field, the guys going to war, those are the guys who drove the ship for Nick Saban. And as it turns out, the loss to Ole Miss may be one of the best things that happened to him that year. But I will never forget that, because there were 2 fights between Bama players on their own sideline, one in a blowout win at Georgia, one in a national championship win later that year. I never saw either one talked about publicly. Don't know how people missed it. Maybe they didn't want to talk about it. I found it fascinating, though.